Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be solving this quadratic equation, x squared plus 3x minus 10 equals 0. And we're going to be using the quadratic formula to solve this question. So before we solve it, the first thing I want to tell you guys is this. Whenever you're given a question and you plan on using the quadratic formula, it's important for you to be able to match the question that you're given to the general form, which I'm going to write as GF. So this is basically the general form of a quadratic equation. If you're given a question that isn't looking like this form, you have to try to make it look like this form. So A is the coefficient of x squared, B is the coefficient of x, and C is the constant value. So looking at both equations and comparing them, we know that the coefficient of x squared for the equation A equals 1. The coefficient of x in the first equation is B equals 3. And the constant value C equals to negative 10. Now that we know that, we can proceed to using the quadratic formula to solve the question. So you have the quadratic formula to be x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. The next thing we have to do is we're just going to substitute, and that's why quadratic formula is literally one of the best, if not the best formula to use, because you can literally solve all quadratic equations. Like, you would get an answer. Either you get 2 real solutions, 1 real solution, or no solution, depending on what the question is like. But it's important for you to know like the power of this formula. So you have x equals, so we're just going to substitute the value. So negative 3 for b, right? Plus or minus the square root b squared, so that's 3 squared, minus 4, that's 4ac, so 4 times 1 times negative 10, divided by, so 2a, that's just 2 times 1. So x, change the color just so it's pretty. So x equals negative 3 plus or minus 3 squared is 9 minus 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times negative 10 is negative 40. So 9 minus 40 divided by 2. So this is equals to negative 3 plus or minus 9 plus 40 equals 2. So x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 49 divided by 2. So now that we have it in this form, this basically this form, I'm just going to rewrite this part of the question on the next page. So we have x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 49 divided by 2, right? Divided by 2. Okay, so this then becomes x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 49. We know that value to actually be 7. So as you're studying for the SATs, you need to be able to know like squares and square roots. For example, I'll advise that you learn the squares and the square roots up until 20. So basically, the square root of 400 to be 20. For you to know 20 squared is 400, and you should know it up until 20. So the square root of 49 is simply 7. You'd be surprised that some students may not be able to quickly think of that, but I would advise that you learn the squared and the square root, which is very, very important for your test, so that you don't have to consistently rely on a calculator. So divided by 2, so you have x equals, now that we have this, we can split our information into the plus point and the minus point. So we can call x, we can call it x1, and then we can call it x2. So you have negative 3 plus 7 divided by 2. And this part, since we have a plus or minus, we can say negative 3 minus 7 divided by 2. So x1 equals 7 minus 3 is 4 divided by 2. So x1 equals 2. Great. And then x2 equals negative 3 minus 7 is negative 10 divided by 2. So x2 equals negative 5. So x1 is 2 and x2 is negative 5. So this is basically the answer to the question. Just a quick recap is always have your general form whenever you're given a quadratic equation that you want to solve using the quadratic formula. Always know your general form. Determine what the coefficient of x squared, x, as well as the constant it is. When you're done doing that, you write the quadratic formula and you substitute the value of a, b, and c into the equation. You solve and you work with your squares and your square roots. You make sure you memorize them. When you get to that point where you split your information to x1 and x2, you work with x1 to get the value of x1 and you work with x2 to get the value of x2. So in this particular question, we have two real solutions because both 2 and negative 5 are real numbers and we have two of them. So that's why you have two real solutions. If you really like this video, make sure you check my other videos on quadratic equations within the SAT Math Prep series. So this is the SAT Math Prep series where I teach SAT math questions and practice daily for students. I would advise that you guys should watch out for the daily series and just basically watch them and learn from them. That's really the point. I wish you guys all the very best and do not give up because it takes time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.